Evaluating your email infrastructure ahead of the next audit, or just revisiting SMTP vendors, besides deliverability, what really matters is how your emails are stored, logged, and encrypted, especially when compliance is in question. Because every KYC approval, onboarding update, or fraud alert isn't just a message, it's a potential risk if mishandled. So in this video, we are cutting through the marketing claims to show how 4 leading SMTP providers hold up under compliance evaluation, from certifications to encryption, and everything else auditors might inspect. Hello and welcome to Mailtrap videos, where we explore the world of emails. First up, certifications. Submit ISO and SOC documentation for all integrated vendors, including your SMTP provider. For anyone who's experienced an audit, hearing this request might sound familiar, but if it caught you off guard, you're not alone. Most teams overlook email infrastructure when it comes to compliance, as it feels more like a background system rather than a part of your core stack. The solution? Picking a provider that treats compliance as non-negotiable. So let's have a look at how Mailtrap, Postmark, SMTP2Go, and Amazon SES hold up when it comes to industry standard certifications. With an ISO 27001 certification and GDPR compliance, Mailtrap covers data security management across infrastructure and operations. The platform doesn't currently claim PCI DSS compliance, but does enforce strict data minimization and encryption policies, helping it stay aligned with regulatory best practices. Postmark, as of active campaign, inherits SOC 2 Type 2 and ISO 27001 compliance from its parent infrastructure. However, PCI DSS isn't currently listed among Postmark's declared compliance scopes, reflecting its focus on transactional email rather than payment data handling. SMTP2Go holds an ISO 27001 certification and backs it with a well-organized compliance center. Just like the 2 previous platforms, it also doesn't explicitly list PCI DSS compliance. But with a track record of being used by regulated companies, it's often viewed as a viable option for teams operating in tightly controlled environments. Another platform with inherited certifications in place, Amazon SES, covers ISO 27001, SOC 123, PCI DSS, GDPR, FedRAMP, and more. Compliance artifacts are accessible via AWS Artifact, but ensuring your SES deployment aligns with regulatory requirements will depend entirely on your team's configuration. This includes everything from setting IAM permissions and tagging resources to properly managing data retention and access policies. That's a lot of acronyms for one compliance checklist, right? Now, it's time to move on to the next headache, data residency. So, picture this. You're on a call with a major EU banking partner. Everything's going smoothly, until someone from their compliance team chimes in. Where would email data be processed, and under what jurisdiction? That question, it can decide whether the partnership closes or stalls. Because here's the truth. GDPR, PDPA, and local data laws don't just care how secure your data is, they care where it lives. Having said that, here are the storage models and data handling policies of the top providers. Mailtrap hosts all email data in the United States using AWS, relying on the platform's secure, redundant infrastructure to manage storage and delivery with compliance in mind. And while there's no EU-specific data isolation at this time, Mailtrap does participate in the EU-US Data Privacy Framework and supports standard contractual clauses for international data transfers. The platform also undergoes regular security reviews and penetration testing to ensure its infrastructure stays audit ready. Similar to Mailtrap, Postmark's infrastructure is also US-based, with no current option to select or isolate a processing region like the EU. It supports international data transfers using standard contractual clauses. And via its parent company, Postmark also participates in the Data Privacy Framework. SMTP2Go supports region-specific routing with servers in Amsterdam, Frankfurt, and London, making it well suited for teams with strict EU data residency requirements. When EU routing is selected, all email data remains fully contained within EU borders with appropriate isolation. For US-based operations, SMTP2Go also offers domestic routing, providing options based on your regional requirements. Amazon SES offers region-based configuration, including EU and APAC. This allows teams to localize email processing within designated jurisdictions, including GDPR, PDPA, and similar frameworks tied to customer location. However, because SES is largely user-managed, your team's setup is critical to avoid cross-border exposure. Residency handled? Good, because the next compliance curveball is all about traceability, and it's a big one. Maybe it's an issue over a fee update. Maybe a client says they never received your fraud notice. Getting into a dispute in fintech can take even the smallest error. And when it comes to email communication, your best line of defense is email logs. After all, in regulated finance, if it wasn't logged, it didn't happen. So let's break down how each provider helps or limits your ability to prove what communication took place and when. Mailtrap retains detailed email logs, including delivery status, bounce reasons, timestamps, and full message metadata for up to 30 days, depending on your plan. The logs can be accessed via the dashboard or API and exported for archiving or integration with internal systems like SIEM, audit tools, or custom reporting dashboards. Enterprise plans include access to activity logs and granular role-based permissions to help enforce least privilege access to email records. And though they lack cryptographic immutability, the granular event data the logs contain supports transparency and traceability for most routine audits and compliance checks. Postmark retains logs for 45 days by default, with an option to extend retention up to 365 days through an add-on. Each log captures status events, delivery outcomes, bounce details, and user interactions like opens and clicks. The logs are immutable, so once recorded, they can't be changed. But if you want to export them, you'll have to use the Message Events API, as there is no built-in UI-based bulk export. With SMTP2Go, on advanced plans, you get up to 120 days of log retention with each log capturing delivery paths, bounce times, timestamps, and status codes. Accessibility to logs is provided via the UI as well as API, with the export process being very straightforward. Still, following the practices of most other clients, SMTP2Go doesn't offer immutable logging. Amazon SES doesn't retain logs by default. So to capture delivery events, bounce data, or message metadata, your team would need to integrate SES with services like Amazon CloudWatch, S3, or EventBridge. On top of that, there's no built-in immutability either, meaning long-term integrity depends entirely on how your storage and access controls are structured. With logs, you can prove delivery. But now let's talk encryption, because without it, you're one plain text email away from a violation. On a typical Friday night, your Chief Information Security Officer won't surprise you with a call. But when a customer verification email goes out with no TLS and no fallback, you'll likely hear from him and maybe even your lawyers who are prepping to write GDPR breach reports instead of weekend plans. Think that's extreme? It happens every day when encryption is treated as an afterthought. Some providers enforce encryption by default. Others leave it up to chance. Here's how our top 4 providers protect sensitive data. Mailtrap enforces TLS 1.2+ on all outbound connections, ensuring encrypted delivery whenever the recipient supports it. If the destination server doesn't support TLS, you can configure Mailtrap to either log the issue or block the message entirely, helping prevent accidental fallback to plain text. In addition to that, all message data, including logs and metadata, is encrypted at rest by default, so you can count on secure transmission and storage out of the box with no need for custom setup. With Postmark, TLS is strictly enforced for SMTP delivery, and HTTPS is required for all API interactions. Also, as plaintext fallback isn't allowed, if the receiving server can't handle encryption, the message simply won't be sent. When it comes to stored data, the platform encrypts message content, logs, and metadata at rest. SMTP2Go supports both SSL and TLS, but does not enforce them by default, making unencrypted delivery possible if misconfigured. Still, the platform does offer real-time TLS monitoring to help teams spot issues in transit and encrypts stored data at rest using AES 256. A slightly different approach is seen in Amazon SES, which supports opportunistic TLS by default. This leaves messages to be encrypted in transit only if the recipient supports it. For stricter policies, your team will need to configure TLS enforcement manually. And when it comes to the key management service for encryption, this is also the case, as setup, monitoring, and policy alignment are all on your side. When choosing the right SMTP provider, the stakes are pretty high. One missed log, one email sent unencrypted, and suddenly you're not just explaining it to an auditor, you're escalating to legal. So when evaluating providers, don't just ask who has the most features, instead ask which one protects your audit trail, your license, and your reputation. Now, let's recap with a use case lens. Mailtrap is a strong fit for modern fintech platforms that need reliable delivery, strong compliance safeguards, and integrated testing. Ideal for digital banks, neo-brokers, or embedded finance providers scaling across regions. Postmark is built for transaction-heavy products that prioritize auditability, a solid choice for tools like invoicing platforms or payroll software. SMTP2Go offers flexibility for regulated but cost-conscious firms, like smaller wealth managers or regional lenders, where manual routing and long retention windows help meet compliance without heavy engineering investment. And finally, Amazon SES, with its DIY nature, suits engineering-led teams in larger fintechs or payment processors who need full customization, deep AWS integration, and have the DevOps capacity to build compliance guardrails in-house. Curious how leading email platforms compare beyond compliance? Check out our email API flexibility series covering platforms like Mailtrap, Resend, Postmark, Mailgun, SendGrid, and more. See you there.